Colin Davis chose the music of Sibelius to open one of his inaugural concerts as principal guest conductor of the Boston Symphony in October 1972. It was a pivotal moment for the new conductor and a composer then much neglected in Boston. Davis was the first to conduct the Third Symphony since Serge Koussevitzky in 1939, and the critic of the Boston-based Christian Science Monitor reported promisingly on the new relationship. "The BSO has a history of seeing eye to eye with Mr. Davis," he wrote. "A professional friendship bound to offer rewards to the listening audience." 1972 was the year that brought a changing of the guard in Boston. Colin Davis and Michael Tilson Thomas were jointly installed as principal guest conductors. William Steinberg's brief tenure as music director was set to end, and his successor, Seiji Ozawa, had already been designated music advisor and from 1973, music director. The music of Sibelius had been a staple of Boston audiences throughout the Koussevitzky era, and in the 1932-33 season, the conductor led the world's first integral cycle of the Seven Symphonies. Under Charles Munch and Erich Leinsdorf, however, performance of Sibelius had faded to a mere trio of symphonies, Finlandia and the Violin Concerto. Steinberg neglected Sibelius completely, and Ozawa only programmed the Violin Concerto in 1985 for the recently defected Victoria Mullova. It was Colin Davis who reawakened the Boston Sibelius tradition, and central to his recorded legacy with the orchestra was the symphony cycle he made across 1975 and 1976. The first of three cycles Davis recorded, it is still widely regarded as his most distinguished, and with their Edvard Munch covers, the most distinctive. Indeed, when it was first released as a cycle in 1977, one of the world's most august record clubs, the Carnegie Hall Selection Committee, deemed it definitive. The leading Sibelius conductor of our time, joining forces with what may well be the finest Sibelius orchestra in the world. Gramophone magazine agreed. The musicologist Robert Layton, who was their Sibelius specialist, described Davis as a born Sibelian, preferring his cycle to those of Barbarolli, Bernstein and Marzell, which were the leading contenders at the time. "There is a wild grandeur about this performance," he wrote of Davis's Fifth, admiring the fine pacing and superb sense of proportion. Similarly, in the Seventh, it was the great breadth and power of the Boston Symphony's playing that so impressed Layton. The album featuring Symphonies 5 and 7, recorded in January 1975, was both the first fruit of the Davis-Boston relationship and what proved to be the swan song of Phillips's era of quadraphonic recording. Symphony Hall Boston had been no stranger to experiments in quadraphonic recording ever since Deutsche Grammophon usurped RCA Victor as the orchestra's exclusive record label in 1970. But quadraphonic recording was short-lived, and the Boston sessions in January 1975 were among the last Phillips made using that technology. None of the remaining 5 Sibelius symphonies were recorded quadraphonically, nor was the disc of the 5th and 7th ever released as a quad LP. In fact, only one Phillips quadraphonic LP ever saw the light of day. Phillips had high hopes of targeting the Japanese market with an extensive catalogue of quad recordings made in the early 1970s, boasting an artist roster that included Colin Davis, Kurt Masur, Seiji Ozawa, Neville Marriner, Bernard Haitink and Alfred Brendel. Looking back at that time half a century ago, Tadatsu Atarashi, then head of Phillips's classical division in Japan, remembers, "The only quadraphonic LP Phillips Japan released was the Beethoven Ninth with Seiji Ozawa and the New Philharmonia Orchestra. It was recorded in London in February 1974. JVC at that time was one of the shareholders of Phillips Japan, and the LP used the JVC system called CD4, 4-channel stereo. Why only one quad LP? Sales were a disaster," Atarashi recalls, and it is indeed ironic that a market which was about to become polarised between two competing video formats, Sony's Betamax versus JVC's VHS, was already mired in consumer confusion over the plethora of alternative quadraphonic systems. In addition to JVC's CD4, which was also used by Deutsche Grammophon, there was Denon UD4, Sansui's QS system, and the CBS SQ matrix system. The latter was used by both CBS Masterworks and EMI for its first quad releases in 1972. Decca was the only major label to resist releasing quad LPs, although it had stockpiled a number of masters in readiness. For this release, Rainer Maillard at Emil Berliner Studios has used the original edited 4-track quadraphonic master tape to make a new stereo mix sent directly to the cutter head. This preserves a pure analog path throughout. The Philips engineers of the 1970s would similarly have mixed the 4 front and rear channels before cutting, but this downmix would have resulted in a 2-track stereo copy for mastering, whereas here the lacquer is cut directly from a live mix into stereo from the 4 quad channels. Sonic results have been further enhanced by distributing the recording across 3 sides instead of the original double-sided LP. This enables a slightly higher transfer level and reduction in inner groove distortion. Sibelius's 5th is 32 minutes in this performance, a few minutes above the optimal side length for an LP. Although the new mastering now results in a side break, it was felt that the sonic improvements significantly amplify these great performances. It has also enabled us to include Davis's December 1975 recording of Sibelius's last major orchestral work, Tapiola, made in 2-channel stereo only.